All right, this is just another review and short recording of central limit theorem relative to sample proportions. And I was just helping a student, and I realized that some of you may not be catching on to the basic of what is required here. So looking at this question in particular, the question begins with asking the mean for the p hat itself. So you have to be careful because the wording is tricky on these questions, and I've caught myself with the slightest distraction, and I'm flailing myself in terms of understanding what the question is asking. So let's take a look at this carefully, and as you read the question, keep in mind the first thing they're asking you is what is the p hat. Find the mean of the average, in other words, the average of the p hat. So in this case, I want you to stop and I want you to realize that they're talking about a sample size of 1,900 loans. And in this case, we're looking at 5% as basically the p hat that's given to you. It's actually already done for you. It says the credit risk department of a major bank estimates that the default rate on loans under 10,000 to be 5%. So they're already giving you the answer for p hat. So there you are. P hat is really 1,900 times that 0.05, and all of this times 1,900, or divided by 1,900. So basically that is given to you as your p hat. Find the standard deviation of p hat. So remember, for standard deviation, that's going to be the square root of the p hat, 0.05, times the q hat, which is 1 minus 0.05, and all of that over 1,900. When you do the math for this one, I believe I got 0.005 on this one. Now, the third question is the one that you probably will struggle a little bit with, because you have to remember the direction of the sign. This means more than. The z-score that you're going to obtain is going to be the greater than side. So first of all, the formula that we're going to use is p hat minus p over the square root of, again, pq over n. P hat q hat over n, and in our case this will be, because they're focusing on this p hat being 0.06, that's 0.06 minus the original p hat or p value that they gave us of 0.05, and all of that divided by 0.005. Okay, so remember, this is the standard deviation. This is our standard deviation for the p hat. So when you do the math here, and so I'm going to do the math in stages for you, you're going to notice here two things. We're going to begin, let me just use I'm going to do this the long way because most of you don't have the TI-8384 calculator, so I just don't want to do this any other way. Let's go with the calculator use. I'm going to go to mode clear. Give it a minute to start up. And then we're going to use Excel once we're ready. Okay, so if I go to mode clear, notice that I'm going to start with 0.06, which is what the question entails for the p hat, minus 0.05. And that gives me 0.10, and I'm going to divide that by 0.005, which is our standard deviation. That gives me a z-score of 2.0. Okay, so remember, that's a z-score. Go back to my page here. So this equals 2.0. That's a z-score. If we use Excel and we go to equals norm s dist, and we put in 2.0, okay, look at what's going to happen. I'm going to use Excel for this. Here's Excel. Okay, so we're going to go here. Open this up. And I'm going to say equals NORMS, and that narrows me down to enormous dist. Remember, you use that when you have a z-score. Our z-score is 0. If you notice, I have 0.97725, but that's not what I want. What happens here is, if you remember, you've got the normal distribution out here. You've got the z-score of 0 here. Here's z-score of 1, here's z-score of 2, and z-score of 3 is somewhere over here. I'm looking at all of this being 0.97725. The difference up here is 1 minus 0.97725, which gives you a difference of 0.0228. And that should be your response for this question, because you're looking at more than. In other words, when they did the answer, or they asked you the question, they're saying z greater than or equal to, if you notice. That's why you do 1 minus. So 1 minus the 0.97725, which should yield you an area of 0.0228, and that should be your answer. And they do want 4 decimals. All right, so that is one of a few questions that you have that we're going to talk about. Let's take a look here. Let's see, I have this question I drew up. So in this question, again, another one where you have to pay attention to what is given to you, because they mentioned 2 percentages, so you got to figure out which of these you need. So the first thing is they want the average, where p hat is the proportion of minority applicants. So if you notice, they do state very clearly in the question right here, exactly 12% of applicants were minority applicants. So that means that our p hat in this example is 0.12. Okay, so that's done. In this question, they're asking you what is the standard deviation. So again, we take the square root of p hat q hat, so 0.12 times 0.88 over 1650, as I believe that was a sample of that we have, and that's stated there in the question. And so I believe that once you take the square root of all of that, you should end up with an answer of 0.008. So this is your standard deviation. Now, you remember that this is n times p, by the way, just in case you forgot. And so 0.12, but this is given to you. You don't even have to compute it. Second part of the question, notice the direction here. This is less than. So once you do your z-score and you do norm as this, that should be your answer. So to set the question up, we're going to start with 0.10 minus 0.12. And all of that divided by that 0.008. Now remember, the 0.10 is sitting here. You see how it says 10% of the 1650. Now this is why it's probably confusing, and why you need to remember that that is the actual p hat value. What we're searching for here is n times p, and that value is given to us as the total percentage of applicants. In this case, so again, once again, let's pull up the calculator. So we're going to take 0.10 minus the 0.12, giving us a negative 0.02, and we're going to divide that number by 1650. I'm sorry, not by 1650, by, we're on the third part. So 0.10 minus the 0.12. Okay, and then we're going to divide that by 0.008. Now, that means that the z-score is a negative 2.5, if you notice up on the screen. So the z-score, which is less than negative 2.5, and they're asking you what is the probability less than or equal to 0.1. All right, so let's use Excel. So I'm going to go to Excel. I'm going to say equals norm s dist. We're going to put in negative 2.5. Notice how that is 0.0062, and actually that is our answer. So they only want 4 decimal places, so we stop here. Remember, that is because this is z is less than or equal to 0.1. All right, and so that's why we use the 0.10 in the formula. Remember, in the formula, we're saying 0.10, which is the equivalent here, minus the 0.12 divided by 0.008. Again, remember, at this point, we are getting a value, which is a z-score of negative 2.5. So again, what I did to get that value, I did norm s dist, and I put in negative 2.5. Okay, and that gives me the area. That area is stated right there. Okay, I'm going to preview just one more example with you, and just look at the questions that I'm showing you on here, because your questions should not be very different, I would think. This is the second question I ran across. So if you look carefully at this one has, okay, so if you look at it carefully, it says empirical research on stock market data for 2 consecutive trading days indicates that 40% of the stocks went up on the first day. Okay, so we already have our p-hat as 0.40. Our standard deviation, we're going to take the square root of 0.40 times 0.60, and we are dividing that by 600. Okay, so once again, let's use our calculator. So 0.4 times 0.6. Okay, and we're going to divide that by, I believe it was 600. And now we take the square root of that answer. So we're going to go second square root, second answer equals, and you get 0.02. So that's our standard deviation. Now, if we apply the formula, notice that they're giving us p-hat at 0.39, so we're going to go with 0.39 minus 0.40 divided by 0.02. Notice the direction of the inequality, which is less than. So if we take our calculator and we do a little math, we're going to start with 0.39 minus 0.40, and we're going to divide that by 0.02. You get negative 0.05, negative 0.5. So we are once again going to into Excel. We're going to go equals norm s dist, and we're going to put in negative 0.5. That is the answer for the probability. In this case, they're asking us the probability that p-hat is less than 0.38 in the question. Remember, this is not a related question. So our response, because it's less than, is already given to us at 0.3085, and we could leave it there. Okay, let's take a look at the third question that I have, or the fourth question I have here. In this question, it says a minority representation group accuses a major bank of racial discrimination in its recent hires for financial analysts. Exactly 10% of the analysts were from minority members. We've already answered our p-hat, our p-value. So in this case, 0.10. Our standard deviation is going to be 0.10 times 0.90, and we're dividing that by 900 openings. So when we do the math here, again, I'm just using a regular calculator. 0.1 times 0.9, which is 0.09 divided by 900. And if I take the square root of that, I should end up with an answer of 0.01. Okay, so you could do that in your calculator. Now, the final answer here will become, for this, you would have to do the z-score. So 0.8 minus that 0.10 divided by 0.01. All right, so let's find that z-score. 0.8 minus 0.10. All of that is divided by 0.01. That's a very strange answer I just got. Let me try that again. Must have punched something in wrong. 0.8 minus 0.10. Oh, that's why. It's 0.08. 0.08 minus 0.10 gives me negative 0.02 divided by 0.01. That tells me that the z-score is -2. Look at the direction of the inequality. So if I again go into normus dist, so if I go in here, I'm looking at equals NORMS, normus dist. I'm punching in a -2, and I get 0.02275. Remember that this is written as p, where p-hat is less than or equal to, and I believe the answer for this was 0.08 or 8%. So this is the actual answer. So this actually equals the z-score of -2, which is equivalent to a p-value of 0.022 or 0.0028. All right, I hope this refreshes your memory from the lecture. And like I said, just find a quiet place. I don't know about you guys, but I like to find a quiet place where I can concentrate on the question and take it all in. Noise interrupts learning. Keep that in mind. It's important for you to find a quiet place where nobody's talking to you and you don't have any mental interruptions. So anyway, I hope this helps.